Aloha, and welcome to another pre-game preview of the Ohana Packers Edition podcast, the podcast where two dudes from halfway across the world chat about everything green and gold. I'm Mike, and that's Iowa Joe. Today, we're looking at Week 4's Thursday night matchup against the division rival Lions. Joe, let's just start it off real quick. Packers are looking to get a bunch of guys back this week, hopefully. Early notes from today's pressers were that Christian Watson and Aaron Jones should be making their way back to the field, and Jair, Zach Tom, and Carrington Valentine all also returned to practice today. So looks like they're trying to see to have everybody healthy for this game, and I think it does kind of point to how they are focusing on this as a potential turning point of the season. But are you viewing it that way too, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I like we were saying off air that the thought is that the reason why some of the guys didn't play against the Saints were to kind of save them for Detroit because of the short turnaround. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. I know, Christian Watson said the plan was to maybe do like a snap count. But then if you went back and listened to like LaFleur, he said, well, he's not even cleared through the medical team yet. So I don't know what he's talking about. And nobody mentioned, or LaFleur didn't have anything more to say about Aaron Jones, but Romeo Dobbs pretty much said, yeah, Jones will be playing. So that, if they were planning on
LaFleur probably took Dobbs out behind the woodshed after that one.
So any kind of secrecy that the Packers were going to try having to go into the game kind of went out the window because their own players were blabbing about it all. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle the turnover. I mean, I do expect most of them to come back. The two that are really going to be questioned, maybe a third if you add in there, is Zach Tom, Carrington Valentine, and maybe Jair. Tom and Valentine because of the injury during the game, and there's been really no update on what it was, and Tom's was so late in the game. Valentine's, I know they said it was a bicep, but I don't think they said it was a tear, but it was some...
What's it called? LaFleur confirmed it was not a tear, and then it sounds like Tom played on the knee for like a whole drive or something like that. So yeah, they didn't make it clear when exactly either injury happened. Valentine's was a little more obvious because people were kind of pointing it out on Twitter, but Zach's was a little bit more cloudy in terms of what play it exactly occurred on.
Yeah, so those two are the ones that I'm more concerned about. Jair a little bit just because his was kind of the same thing. It was a bit of a, all of a sudden it came out and nobody knew what was going on. And back injuries are nothing to mess with.
Both of us.
Yeah, I really don't. I don't really blame him for not wanting to play because I sure in the hell don't want to go out and play with the kind of back issues that I'm dealing with. So I can understand that, but I think I think we're going to be as healthy as we have been in a while. And I was watching the Pick Six from Game On earlier, and Jacob and Brendan were both talking about how, man, we just wish we could see all these guys together because once they did, and all I could think about is we used to hear that shit when it came to when Rodgers first started taking over. Oh, he's got all these weapons, but they can never play together because they're always injured. And it's like, man, these parallels are just not ending. So
It's true. It's a little freaky that way.
It is. I mean, all this stuff, all these parallels are just lining up too much to... It really makes you think if the NFL is actually scripted,
Well, we all know where to keep our eyes 15 years from now if that's the case, but...
No kidding. I kept joking after the trade that they probably snuck a rider in the trade agreement saying that now 15 years later, you've got to trade Jordan Love to the Jets for, undisclosed picks. So yeah, but these parallels are something else. But yeah, Thursday's going to be definitely a true test for this team, and hopefully, mostly they'll be healthy. I have
Yeah.
to wonder if the Bakhtiari thing might have been, I know there's been all the conspiracy about him missing the Atlanta game because of the turf, but then he missed the game against the Saints, so that kind of threw the conspiracy out the window. But it also makes me wonder if it's also saving him for this Thursday game a little bit more, give him a little more time off. But yeah, the two big ones I'm worried about right now are Tom and Valentine because they happen so much recent.
Yeah, you hope to have especially Tom back because I mean you want them both back Valentine because they're just running out of corners on the active roster at the moment,
Yeah.
and then Tom because of the front that they're about to face, especially with Aiden Hutchinson popping off to start this season. Um, for the advanced analytics, this game is relatively even. Detroit is ninth overall in DVOA. Green Bay is 12th. Um, the separating factor there mostly is the fact that Green Bay has now the 27th ranked special team. So that's kind of where the disparity between the two teams are. But in terms of their mindsets, Green Bay has the illusion of complexity, and Detroit is they've got the kneecap biter. So
Yeah.
um so it's all like we said, they they don't want to admit it, but they definitely wanted as many hands on deck as possible to give themselves the best chance to combat Detroit's strengths head on with what should be Green Bay's strengths, or at least positions of strength, because they have good depth there. We've seen Rasheed Walker play well. Zach Tom's obviously been a stalwart to start the season. So uh, just to
And like
kind of
we've
keep it,
talked about before, they're starting to run out of depth for the offensive line too, because there's not even that many of them on the practice squad that they can do a call up for.
yeah,
Now, another one, and I saw like Ken Ingalls mention it, but I wasn't on Twitter much the other day. So did they actually sign Patrick Taylor to the
no,
53?
no,
Okay.
people are just projecting it, but it hasn't happened yet. I Yeah, I'm kind of surprised it hasn't happened yet at this point because, and that's why I'm not sure if it's going to, because you would figure that if they wanted to swap him and Wilson, let's say, that's why I don't think Wilson's getting cut at this point. I think if anything, they put Zane Anderson on IR and just sign Taylor. Then
Yeah, but like I was having the discussion with friend of show Peter Jones, it doesn't make sense to carry the four running backs on the roster when you've got so many other places that could use that spare roster spot. I mean, I understand it in a way to keep, because Aaron Jones is dealing with an injury. AJ Dillon hasn't been living up to what we need him to be. And, Wilson is just what Wilson is doing. But it makes absolutely no sense to me to carry four running backs on the roster no matter what. If Aaron Jones is that bad, then maybe he needs to go on the IR for the 4 weeks and go from there. If they don't believe Wilson is going to be that guy, then yeah, go ahead and cut him and hope you can get him back on the practice squad. My dream right now, and I hate to say this because I know he's a good guy and everything, my dream would be is that they could swing some kind of deal to trade AJ Dillon to get something out of him, whether it's, a change of scenery type player or, just a mid to late round draft pick or a conditional pick or something. Because right now, other than like we talked about during the game review against the Saints, he's been doing all right in the passing game, but he's done almost nothing when it comes to the run game. And we need him more for the run game than we do for the passing game at the moment. So, but yeah, like I said, there's no reason to me to have the four running backs on roster when there's so many other positions, because that just means that they're gonna leave one off the active 53, or I mean active 48. That's what that tells me, and that makes no sense either. That if you're gonna keep four on the roster, but you're gonna keep one inactive, then why even have that fourth one?
yeah, well, I do think the injuries are going to kind of take care of that in terms of like Bakhtiari. If he doesn't go, Jenkins is almost not going to go, and Campbell may not go. So I think for a 1 week thing, it could work. But you're right. For the long term, it doesn't make sense to carry four. But it's neither here nor there. We'll see what they do. They've got, what is it, 36 hours basically to make their decision before kickoff. But Detroit's dealing with some injuries too. Their starting fullback and right guard have been DNP so far this week. Vaitai missed the game last week, and then they had four other starters who were limited participants, three of whom their left tackle, Kirby Joseph, he who picks off Aaron Rodgers as a rookie, and David Montgomery all missed their game last week. So Detroit's a little bit banged up to not necessarily to as many key players as Green Bay was, but neither team is 100% healthy coming into this game, so it does kind of level the playing field from that sense of it too. So, like you said, just kind of also potentially indicates that maybe Green Bay was right to play it a little bit safer last week, and I mean they were right because they won. They won the game.
Yeah.
So
We wouldn't be saying that if they had lost.
Seriously, that always makes certain decisions look more prudent when the outcome is favorable, regardless. But looking at Detroit, they're playing really confident right now. A lot of it is because Jared Goff is off to a hot start on the season, and that's, I don't want to say completely on the back of, but we've seen Goff play really well when he has a good O-line playing in front of him, and we've seen him look like crap when he's getting pressured on a consistent basis. And Penei Sewell has come into his own at right tackle, and they embody their coach's mindset. They're all kneecap buters, and they took it to Green Bay's front in week 18 of last season to be a big reason that Green Bay didn't make the playoffs. And like we kind of said at the top, this is where Green Bay has to answer the bell and prove that they're gonna get down and dirty in the trenches on both sides of the line of scrimmage, but especially against this Detroit O-line, because to have success getting Goff off rhythm, they've got to get the better of this O-line to get in Goff's face and make him go into some bad decisions.
Well, and the big thing is going to be the defensive line itself. I think our pass rush is going to get home, pretty good. They're at least going to get pressure. I mean, look at, Rashawn Gary's snap counts are obviously going to go up a little bit. And he was pretty much manhandling the Saints offensive tackles all game this past week. So, he's going to come out. Preston has been Preston. I mean, he hasn't been overly, but he's still been getting pressure out there. Hercules, my boy, he's hopefully going to get some pressure on him too. I think the pressure is going to get there from the edge. It's going to be the interior line that's going to be the issue. Hopefully Kenny can build on what he did against the Saints. Let's see some more snaps for Carl Brooks. Devontae Wyatt, in my eyes, was kind of quiet against the Saints, but maybe he can step it up and be what he should be doing. It also wouldn't surprise me if one of their call-ups was maybe like Jonathan Ford, just to add an extra body on that defensive line. Because the key is they're going to pound the run. If Montgomery plays, then they're going to pound him. But it looked like Gibbs was really having his coming out against the Falcons. And that's going to be the scary part, is going to, it's kind of like facing the Raiders. Jesus, why do I keep saying Raiders? Facing the Falcons with Bijan Robinson. So it's going to be, how are they going to contain him more than it is, well, Jared Goff's going to, throw all over you. If Jair plays, if Carrington plays, if Nixon plays, if Razul plays, the defensive backs are, I think, well, outside of maybe one safety position, I think the defensive backs are going to be all right, and the edges are going to be all right. It's going to be that interior defense that I think that's going to have to really step it up to do something.
Yeah, like you said, they do go by a heavy backfield by committee approach, the Lions, that is. And Gibbs is the kind of back who has given Green Bay trouble in terms of he can play in space. And the thing that we've seen so far this season, and I was commenting on Twitter during the Saints game, is the Saints kind of just threw run plays away because they ran into the teeth of the Green Bay defense. And they've been, especially when they have some combination of Slayton and Kenny up front, they're stout between the tackles. They're how Atlanta killed them was getting outside on the edge. And I thought New Orleans was tapping into that right before halftime, and then they went away from it, even though they had success moving down the field pretty easily when they were attacking outside. So it's going to be big on the Green Bay edge players to finally set an edge this season. Got to be gap sound against this Detroit Lions team because, like you said, they want to lean on the run game to allow Goff to play action, and because that's when he's his most comfortable, is when he was able to sell hard play action and sit in the pocket with heavier protection settings and just kind of wait for receivers to come open. So, like you said, Green Bay's pass rush is going to have to get home this week, but in order to do that, they've got to earn the right to rush the passer. On the other side of it, Detroit has really amped up their front seven, and a lot of it is because they have to, because their secondary is pretty banged up. Like I said, Kirby Joseph missed the game last week. CJ Gardner-Johnson is on IR. So in order to stop the pass, Detroit is relying on their front to create pressure. That's where having at least Zach Tom back would be huge, because what they started to do is move Aiden Hutchinson around. You know, he's attacking off either edge, but he's also playing some three tech, and he's had some pretty good success so far this season. So having Zach Tom back at right tackle would be a huge, huge help. I know Jacob made some comments to it. Westendorf made some comments to it on Pick Six, where he was kind of mentioning Aiden and Rasheed Walker facing off in college. Aiden got his, but Rasheed also held his own when they last played each other in the 2021 season. So it wasn't the butt kicking that it was their other tackle who was getting wiped off the field the whole time. Rasheed had one play in that game where he didn't get a line read, so which is something we've seen Rasheed do as a pro. So he needs to make sure that he's on his P's and Q's this week. But I think you've got to feel good.
Well, let's say that if he's starting,
that's true.
You know, hopefully Bakhtiari's playing and Zach Tom's playing. So, you know, not that I wouldn't like to see Rasheed play. I think Rasheed has really done his own, or come into his own, since being given the spot. But if Bakhtiari's playing and is at full bore, and Zach Tom's playing and he's at full bore, then I would feel a little bit more comfortable with it than throwing Rasheed out there to the Wolves.
And it does help that it's a home game, though. But yeah, it would be a lot more that warm, fuzzy feeling if Bakhtiari and Tom's are your two starting tackles on Thursday night. But Green Bay's got to prep for the worst and just try to make the best they can of it. And then the reason I bring up their pass game first is because when you combine what Green Bay's run game has been without Aaron Jones, and you're expecting that Jones is going to be at least somewhat limited this week, and compared to what Detroit's run defense has been, allowing only 72 rush yards per game, Green Bay may not get much on the ground this week. So it behooves them to get their pass pro intact. But
I'm going to disagree with you on that, Mike, because the offensive line has been opening up holes. The problem is the running back hasn't been making the reads like he needs to be. And if Aaron Jones does play, Aaron Jones is a much better runner than A.J. Dillon has been. So I understand what you're saying, where, Detroit's defense is pretty stacked when it comes against defending the run, but I still think with the holes that the offensive line has been opened up for running backs, that Jones could feast, even in limited snaps.
Yeah, I won't put it above him. And I do think a lot of Detroit's success last week against the Falcons is they did what I think you and I both wanted Green Bay to do against Atlanta, which was sell out, stop the run, and make Desmond Ridder do something.
Yeah.
And they basically said, you can try to run, but we're gonna take it. We're gonna do everything we have to take it away. And Desmond Ritter couldn't do enough. So we'll see. And like you said, having Aaron Jones back, he just completely changes the math on offense for the Packers. He raises their ceiling a tier or two just by his presence alone on the field. And having him back would be an absolutely huge bonus for the Packers going into such a big game. So it's a little, I don't want to cop out and totally say, our projections are all based on who plays, but going into a short week like this with so many key guys who say they're playing, but coach is already pulling the rope back on and saying like, no, like not necessarily. Granted, like you said, that was predominantly talking about Watson and not so much about Jones, where regarding who's going to be available this week. LaFleur was just a little more, we're not sure about Jones, whereas Watson's not cleared yet. So we'll see where the cards stack up when they release the inactive list. But we're crossing our fingers that at least Jones is back this week, because like you said, he makes average blocks look like great blocks from the O-line. So it's a force multiplier in that sense, where his efficiency as a runner makes your whole offense look that much better, and having him back would be absolutely huge for the Packers against the Lions.
Definitely, and that's what I mean. I and I don't want to turn these all into bashing AJ Dillon, but AJ Dillon is just not the answer, and he's not been. I'm not as technical as a lot of you guys are when it comes to this, but it doesn't look like he's hitting the hole like he should. And these guys have been opening up a hell of a road for him that he's just not hitting it right. So I think Jones back would be a perfect way to get the run game going. And that's another coincidence. Did you notice that our leading rusher for the Saints game was Jordan Love? And how many times over the years did the leading rusher for the Packers was Aaron Rodgers?
That was later in his career, though. Not his first. He still had Ryan Grant his first year as a starter. So, but I know, like you said, the parallels they are apparent. But let's just like last week, I think our yes no is pretty clear. Yes or no, Aaron Jones, Christian Watson. What you got, Joe, playing this week?
I think both of them do. Unless they have some kind of setback tomorrow, I don't see how they don't play. I mean, you could sit there and say, "Oh yeah, well the coach isn't wanting to verify it because he wants to play mind games," but all the players already know. They're already blabbing their mouths about it. It's pretty fair. I think right now it would be a complete shock if they don't play.
Someone would have to step in a divot, knock on wood, at this point. But I agree with you. I think they're both yeses. Whereas last week we were reading smoke signals and trying to read the tea leaves and all that kind of stuff.
I think we were forgetting about the Thursday night game, because had it not been a Thursday night game, maybe they would have played a little bit on the snap count this week or against the Saints, and then they would have had the week to rest and recuperate to see how they handled it. But because of the short week, I forgot completely about it and didn't think on it like that.
Yeah. And the other thing to look about it from Green Bay's point of view is after tomorrow, they're going to play something like 2 games in 24 days or something like that, because then it's not just from Thursday to the following week, but they play week 5 is a Monday night game. So they have an extra day off. And then it's their bye. Week 6 is the bye week. And then they come out of the bye and play Denver. So they have a lot of time. So
and that'll be another bye.
Yeah. We won't count our chickens totally before they're hatched, but 70 points is 70 points, right? But yeah, I agree with you. I think it's looking pretty good for both of them to get out there this week. And that should only help Green Bay get to some of your over-unders, Joe. What do you got for us this week?
Really, these were like last-minute over-unders because I was busy at work, so I didn't really get a chance to look at anything. But it's kind of similar, just a little bit last week's. But I've got I upped it a little bit just after his performance against the Saints, so I've got over under 1.5 sacks for Rashawn Gary.
I think he'll get it. He's in a groove right now.
I think a lot of it's going to depend on what the his opposite does. I got to thinking about this during the Saints game. I would love to see them put Gary and Van Ness next to each other. Down, one of let Lucas put his hand in the dirt and have Rashawn rush next to him. I just think that would be such a killer combination to go against any offensive line. I mean, you couldn't run it all the time, but a couple times during game just to get that extra pressure on that one side, especially if, let's say, Decker doesn't play this week for the Lions, and then their swing tackle isn't playing. We, rush them from that side both together, and I think you're gonna create just basically a Brothers situation because I don't think you're gonna be able to stop it.
Yeah,
But I'm gonna say over just because, like you said, he's kind of in a groove right now.
sounds good. That would be really good for Green Bay's prognosis on the week.
So this one, it's kind of a rollover. And I think a lot of it's going to depend on his over under, not over under, his snap count, but 45.5 yards rushing for Jones.
I think he'll get it. I think he will. Get the feeling. I don't know if you remember that Thursday night game from 2020 when Green Bay went to San Fran after they had just blown that dumb game against the Vikings and when it was stupid windy at Lambeau. And then Jones had missed that game because he pulled his hamstring. And then he comes back on the short week and everyone's like, oh yeah, he'll be limited this week, blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. And then he's the central focus of the game plan kind of thing. So I get the feeling it's going to be that kind of night. And if Jones plays, he's like you said, he'll get his touches and he'll get his yards.
Well, and what's funny is they like to say snap count for him, but really, if you look at it, he's always on a snap count because I don't know how many times last year he was only getting like 9 to 10 carries. Well, how many you're only going to give him one carry in the game for a snap count, or 2 or 3 carries in the game for a snap count? So he's done a lot more on a lot less carries. So I could see him going the over with it. I'll go the over too, just because I don't see how he couldn't, unless you have where you go in and all three your starting offensive linemen aren't playing. Then if you've got the revolving door, I mean Royce Newman in there, then I could see it being a lot less, but I think I'll go the over with it. So my last one, and I think I'm going to surprise people with my pick, but I'm just going to do it just because I'm more hopeful uh than I am anything. But I have over under half a touchdown for Romeo.
I'm going over. I think he's becoming uh Love's safety blanket receiver. So I think it'll be over.
I'm going to go under, and it's not because I don't think Romeo's going to get the yards and the targets and stuff like that. I'm just hoping one of the others will step up. Now, whether that's Christian Watson in a limited role, or Tay Wicks, or Heath actually getting some play time, or uh,
Reed
Jaden
or
Reed.
Musgrave. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm hoping. I would love to see Romeo go off and have like a 5 touchdown game. That would be amazing to me. But I'm hoping that by saying under for the over under, that it's because of he loves spread the ball around. and hit some other receivers instead of having to rely on Romeo. Not that that's a bad thing, but I just wish he would spread it around a little bit more. So I'm only going to do a couple of them for the Lions, because that, again, it was kind of hard to come up with them just because I didn't pay much attention to what the Lions have been doing. But I've got half a sack for Aiden Hutchinson. I set it low because so far, even with a patchwork line, the Packers offensive line has pretty much kept Jordan Love clean. Outside of a couple of sacks already, but and with Love's mobility, he's been a little bit harder to take down. So I haven't set it half a sack.
I'm going over. I just think because of the questions on the O line, and especially like I said, how they're moving Hutchinson around, he's gonna get matched up against um, either Walker or Royce Newman at some point. So I just think he'll get one. Like you said, Love hasn't been sacked a lot this year, but he's been sacked once a game, and I would bet that it's probably Hutchinson who gets him if anyone gets him this game.
I'll just go the under. I think I'm going to go again, hopeful that our full offensive line is there, and I think they'll stalwart him. I'm hoping for that Rasheed Walker hump of Hutchinson. So we're going to go with that. And my last one I'm going to go with is half an interception for the whole Lions defense.
I'm gonna say no. Under. I think I do think like the Joseph interceptions that he had, a lot of them because they knew Rogers' tendencies, whereas with Love, he's throwing the ball everywhere. So um, less telegraph throws, so to speak, from that sense.
I'm going to go over just because I think it's going to even out the his tendencies, because so far we've seen a pretty clean 3 weeks for Jordan. I mean, we had the one last week, but it's been relatively different than what he's normally used to. So I'm gonna just now I'm gonna end up like jinxing him, and he's gonna have like a 5 interception game or something. But I'm gonna go over, but just slightly. I think it's gonna go to a full interception, and that'll be it.
Okay. Well, hopefully Jordan keeps it pretty clean on Thursday because if he keeps it clean, that means that the offense is probably being pretty efficient, proficient, and that's obviously good things for Green Bay. But Joe, any other thoughts, or are you pretty good for this week?
I'm pretty good. I mean, I'm looking forward to it because I'm actually going to be able to sit at home and watch the game. So, otherwise I'm either watching on my phone or having to catch a stream somewhere. But uh, after Sunday's game against the Saints, I'm really looking forward to it because it shows that it's really hard to punch this team in the mouth right now. And we've seen too many times in the past where they've gotten punched in the mouth and then, that was it. Now you could argue that maybe the Falcons game was a little bit of a punch in the mouth, but they were at least fighting through it for the most part. Did the offense do anything worthwhile? No, but at least they were putting up efforts for it. So, this week is going to be really tough because it's going to be a hell of a punch. And like I said earlier, it's really weird to say that for the Lions because normally the Lions are a punching bag for everybody. But they're really looking like something right now. And it's just, like I've always said since the Rodgers trade happened, it's all unknown. So it's going to be an interesting and a fun season to learn what this team is capable of.
Yep. I think that's pretty key. And honestly, as like you said, as much as Detroit was this tough, mean team last season, and they carried that into this year, Green Bay had just needed to score 20 points in either game to beat them. So I think that's going to kind of hold. And yeah, it's just take care of the ball, keep making good decisions, Jordan. And I think that overall talent on the team, especially getting Jones and Watson back, hopefully that'll help elevate Green Bay enough to carry them over Detroit. But that'll wrap it for this week's preview. Mahalo for joining us on this week's preview edition of the Ohana Packers Edition podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Kawano Mike and Joe at Iowa_Joe86. You can find the show at Ohana_Packers. Remember, news episodes are dropping every Tuesday and Thursday, though this one is dropping on a Wednesday because of the Thursday night game. Please make sure you subscribe and give us a like if you're liking what you hear. Also, please leave us a review. Thursday night football for the division lead. Let's go. Go Pack Go and Aloha.